Good morning, everyone, and welcome to another exciting episode of Leadership and Organizational Development Live, brought to you by TCS Consulting LLC. I would also like to welcome everyone that's watching the replay, whether you're joining us live or catching the episode later. We are grateful that you are here. Please introduce yourself in the comments. Let us know where you're joining us from, and also share your thoughts or questions. We read the comments after the broadcast and would love to continue the conversation with you. I am your host, Dr. Robin R. Hughes of R. Hughes and Associates, and I'm delighted to have you join us today as we explore innovative leadership strategies, organizational effectiveness, workplace excellence, and the science behind human performance. Joining me is my esteemed colleague and co-host, Dr. Jacqueline Brown of Revolution Ascension. Hello, Dr. Brown.
Hi there. Hi there. Greetings, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Hughes. It is a pleasure to be here with you and all of the listening audience. Together, we are committed to bringing meaningful conversation that empowers leaders. It strengthens organizations and it inspires individuals to reach their highest potential. Our approach is grounded in the principles of industrial organizational psychology, positive psychology, helping leaders understand how people think, perform, engage, and thrive within today's ever-changing workplace. I am your sovereign leadership architect, and I am here today to hope that Dr. Robin and I are going to bring you some really, really great nuggets that you can implement into your leadership.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you so much. I want you to know who's in the room with you today. Together, we bring decades of experience in executive leadership, industrial organizational psychology, organizational development, human resources, consulting, coaching, and higher education. And it doesn't even stop there. The list could go on. Our goal, though, is to bridge that research with real world leadership experience. We want to make sure you're getting that. So we want you to leave each episode with practical ideas that you can immediately apply. At TCS Consulting LLC, we believe that great organizations are built by great leaders and leaders who recognize that sustainable success begins with its people. Each week, we'll bring you practical strategies, evidence-based insights, and real-world solutions to create stronger cultures and leaders to help them and the organization thrive. Every week, we're going to discuss topics designed to help you. And again, we want you to be able to apply those immediately. We'll be talking about enhance and leadership effectiveness. We'll talk about improve employee engagement and retention, build higher performing teams, strengthen organizational culture, increase productivity, and also develop resilient and emotional intelligent leaders.
Absolutely. You know, whether you are a CEO, an executive, a manager, an entrepreneur, an educator, a nonprofit leader, HR professional, or emerging leader, what we discuss on this show is designed with you in mind. Because our mission here is to equip leaders and organizations with the practical tools, the evidence-based strategies, and the transformational insights that create measurable results.
Oh, very important, being able to measure and tell that big picture.
Absolutely.
We invite you to participate throughout today's broadcast. Please introduce yourself in the comments. Tell us where and why you're joining us, what interests you, and let us know what your role is. Whether you're a leader, again, like she said, an HR professional, that educator, entrepreneur, consultant, student, or someone who's just passionate about developing people and organizations. Like we always say, you don't have to have the title of leader to be a leader.
That's right.
So if you're watching the replay, we'd love to hear from you as well. Leave your comments or questions and we'll respond after the broadcast. And if you're watching on Facebook, LinkedIn, or YouTube, be sure to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss an episode.
All right. Well, Dr. Robin, I think now let's dive into today's discussion and discover how the power of leadership, organizational psychology, and human potential can transform workplaces and lives.
Yes, yes.
Welcome
to
TCS Live.
Let's get started.
All righty.
Yes, today we're going to talk about, we like to springboard off of, we kind of touched base a little last week about psychological safety, which of course is a trending topic right now in today's economy. So we're going to go over that some, give you some nuggets for success. And we're going to also talk about POS, which is perceived organizational support. And again, it goes back into why employees will thrive or leave an organization. Because today's organizations don't just need talented employees. They need environments where people feel safe to contribute and be supported by their organizations. Research in industrial organizational psychology consistently shows that employees are more engaged, innovative, and committed when they experience psychological safety and perceived organizational support. Because together, these create workplaces where people and organizations can perform at their best.
You know, that is so true, Dr. Robin. And really, when we take a look at what are the needs, and I love that we're going to be talking about psychological safety, because there's so much focus on, well, what's productivity, what's performance, and am I communicating enough? And realistically, those are components that are needed, but it doesn't necessarily provide the work environment with psychological safety. Today's leadership need not just better communication. Of course, always can use better communication. We always need a stronger strategy. Yes, productivity is important. And we definitely want to see performance at a higher, more depth, with more performance, but with more depth. Mm-hmm. But the deeper part of this is the need for human governance. And that's where the psychological safety comes in. Organizations today are dealing with people who are, if we are to be raw and honest, our organizations are dealing with people who are exhausted, very often in emotional overload, and to a degree distrustful. Then there are times when you have really high performers that are underdeveloped and often carrying that residue of toxicity that starts to permeate throughout the work environments. That brings psychological unsafe workplaces. It also, when there's not a focus on this, it also highlights where poor leadership exists. It also highlights where is there broken trust, and where is their culture that is looking at performance only, but actually the organization is deteriorating internally. So when we are talking about leadership today, we can not only talk about the goals and the metrics and the influence and the execution, we also have to talk about the internal condition of the people. We have to talk about what is really going on in the organization psychologically, because if it is toxic and it is not safe, then the organization can't rise above what is going on internally with the people. And a lot of that starts with internal governance for the leadership. And when leaders have great internal governance, now they are actually prepared to lead and to understand the needs of the other leaders in the organization, the other people in the organization. Today's leaders, I think sometimes we get so caught up on titles. Today's leaders, we don't need more titles. We actually don't. We
No.
don't need more titles. Everybody's striving for what their title is. And we don't really need more titles. What we need, and some may kind of, so I want our audience to kind of listen with a different ear. We need more charisma with an understanding. We need more than just technical competence, but we need people to have a charisma that actually doesn't just look great and look pretty and sound good and, it's the next best shiny thing, but that charisma has to be real. It has to be filled with empathy. It has to be filled with understanding and a level of wisdom in leading an organization above and beyond performance and technical competence. Our leaders need more than the ability to speak well in public or make decisions in private. They really need self-governance, and I'm not going to move away from that, because that is where we begin to bring in emotional regulation. That is where we begin to see that, okay, this leader has behavioral integrity. These are things that, honestly, Robin, I'm not sure people are really talking about at the level that you and I actually know that they should. They need discernment. They need the ability to listen without becoming defensive, because defensiveness brings toxicity. They need the ability to lead under pressure without becoming reactive. And honestly, in today's environments, we have some leaders that are literally radioactive. They're not just reactive, they're like radio reactive, like something that is really ready to explode. And we've got to be able as leaders to make decisions without contaminating the culture with unresolved internal issues. Basically, a toxic workplace is not usually created overnight. So it has to be the ability to see it as it's forming, because it's often a result of unmanaged behavior, unregulated emotion, fear-based leadership, poor accountability, and unclear values. And that sounds, I know, a little harsh and wow, are they here today to tell us how psychologically unfit leadership is? Well, the honest answer is yes, this is what we do for a living. And there are really great results when leaders embrace what it is that we do and we teach and we analyze and we consult on, because we are actually helping people to see deeper, to see beyond. Because if we don't lead from our inner core and understanding how to overcome those things that don't belong there, the toxic environments are going to continue to build. And I'm going to pass it back to you, Dr. Robin.
Yeah, that is so true. You said a lot of stuff there. And basically, like you said, when they're overloaded, if you turn around and you're reactionary, that ends up causing problems. The whole idea with psychological safety, it's that shared belief that you're safe to take interpersonal risk, to ask the questions, to admit mistakes, challenge ideas, and also offer new perspectives without fear of embarrassment, punishment, or retaliation. And that comes into play a lot, because otherwise you're going to end up having some issues there. And if you stop and think about everything right now and go and look at stats, when we look at the number of people that are on anxiety medication now, or on depression medication, and a lot of it can be work or personal and or both, because everyone's so stressed and overwhelmed with everything that's going on. And a toxic work environment doesn't help this situation, because a lot of times when you go home, there's spillover. Mom or either dad is upset if they have children, and sometimes that comes out because they're upset about what happened earlier. And then that also can spill over to employees. So we have to be very mindful of how we end up approaching things. Because the first thing, like you said, it's so important that we listen. If we don't listen, at the end of the day, it's a lost cause almost, because you must listen. And I always say, listen to the voice of your customer, whether that customer is your employee, direct report, a vendor, a customer that's buying from you. You need to pay attention and listen to what they say. Don't start speaking while they're still midstream in the conversation. So that's going to be important too. I want to ask the audience, have you ever stayed silent because you feared the consequences? Have you ever stayed silent because you feared the consequences? And I'm going to share a real story with you about that, because it ends up, when you do that, when you stay silent, it causes other problems, even though leaders may not know that. There was an incident that I was dealing with in benefits, and they ended up finding a problem when they went in to do an audit. We conducted an audit, found out that they hadn't paid some people for 401k contributions. They didn't do what they needed to do. They didn't make the deductions. And then they didn't. So that meant when they didn't make those deductions, employees weren't paid what they were supposed to be paid from their 401k. This had been going on for almost a whole year. So there, you have to go back and make people whole. And it becomes an issue with that 401k, and you get fiduciary issues and duties there that you have to look into and see what's going on with it. But it's a major issue. And because the person didn't feel that they could speak up to say, hey, I see this problem, the problem continued. And what ends up happening, that consequence, because they feared speaking up because of how they would be treated, they ended up letting it go on longer, and it ended up costing the company more money. It ended up costing the company more money. And of course, you can get penalized for that as well. So there can be IRS penalties, other penalties associated with it, because you didn't go in and pay what you were supposed to. Some people were even overpaid. There was a $600,000 payout they almost made that they shouldn't have made when we conducted the audit. And they almost paid the individual. And the interesting thing was, this individual lived outside of the country. They weren't here in the US. So had they paid that money out before I had found it, it would have probably just been gone. So they have to, it's very important. And I say all that with, like I said, psychological safety. Make employees feel valued and give them, make them feel like they can speak up when they need to speak up. They shouldn't fear that they can't talk to you about something as a leader. They should always be able to talk to you without fear of retaliation, without fear of it being repeated. And then it's just like wildfire throughout the organization. They should be able to speak with you privately without it going further if it is not something that hurts someone or there's a real need for you to say something. And then in those cases, really, it probably should only be said to just HR. And again, not the rest of the organization. So what have you run into when it comes to staying silent? What kind of things have you run into, Dr. Brown?
It was a situation that was one of those cost you your career situations. And if you speak up, you're sort of like, you could forget it. And the bigger question is, if you don't speak up, are you actually protecting the culture, or are you not speaking? Is that going to cause you to contaminate the organization because of unmanaged behavior? When we see something that we know is not the correct thing. And when things go unchecked, it eventually begins to snowball. So when a leader is in any situation behaving differently than is the best behavior for employee growth, and really even for overall shareholder value, because the employees, the leaders, the managers, all the way down to your maintenance crew, everyone contributes in one way or another to shareholder value. And when things are not brought forward, and so there was a particular situation that needed to be brought forward because this had to do with actual, it fell in the category of sexual harassment. And sometimes those accusations, now we're talking about many years ago. So things have advanced, and these are things that there's so much that has changed to protect people. But during this time, there really wasn't. We're talking about well before the year 2000. And to have to speak up and say, yes, I'm aware of that. I know that happened to that individual. And to stand, and you're really standing alone because other people are like, nope, they don't need to ask me. I don't know what they're talking about. And so in that situation, it was very, very difficult to stand, because I was literally standing by myself outside of the person that it was happening to. And back then, we didn't have the things that we have today in place in most corporations. But at the end of the day, I had to make the decision of, okay, what is the best thing for actually not just the individual it was happening to, but for every other person that's going to come along after that. And here's the real deal with a lot of this. Being silent would have contaminated, tongue-tied. It would have contaminated the organization. And it also would have left unmanaged behavior. And a lot of times when we talk about these things, these are not soft questions. These are structural leadership questions. So the story that you gave and the story that I'm giving, this is where structural leadership comes into play. Because the future of leadership is not simply about who can build the biggest and the best platform, or who can scale the fastest, who speaks the loudest, or who produces the most impressive numbers. But the future of the leadership belongs to those who can build cultures with dignity, with accountability, not just performance, but accountability and performance, and with humility, because it all needs to coexist together.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we're leading in an era of disruption right now. Whether people want to talk about it or not, we are in this era of disruption. And sometimes disruption is not bad, because sometimes things get disrupted for growth. But we have to make sure that we are, again, there's structures in place, that there's human governance in place. We're in a world where technology is changing so rapidly. AI is reshaping the workplace. Economic pressure is affecting families and organizations. Social division is very high right now. And to skip over that and ignore it is to ignore the needs of the people that we're leading and that we're serving, because people are getting tired. Teams are carrying a lot more than they're speaking about.
Mm-hmm.
But again, leaders, we can no longer afford to just be competent in business strategy, competent technically, but we have to be competent emotionally. We have to make sure that we are addressing all of the needs in the organizations. Organizations need leaders that are humanly mature and that can govern themselves first, and that can listen without being defensive. I love the part that you brought up earlier about people being afraid to speak up. People should be able to speak up without being humiliated. And you know, a lot of people will swear up and down, I don't do that, I don't do that, I don't do that. But you and I know that we have gone into organizations and observed, whether it was consulting or a prior project, you know, we have sat there with those notebooks and we've listened. And at the end of the day, leaders don't realize that they do have a psychological toxic environment and they don't see it. So I think that we've got to continue to call the attention. We've got to continue to encourage people and let them know that it is okay to speak up, and that everything is not about performance, title, inspiring. You have great inspirational leaders, but there's no transformation to growth. And inspiration without transformation to growth, then what happens? We know the organization grows stagnant. And we know that that's where the employee engagement begins to happen. So I think in today's organizations, Robin, I think there is this need for leaders to become more structurally aligned internally first, behavior, accountability. We have to have that. And not to normalize. We can't normalize bad behavior.
No.
You know, it's not funny. We see it unfolding every day, all day, with the behaviors that we see. And it can't be normalized. It's
No.
not. It's not funny. It's not something to laugh at. We really need a call to implementing what I do is sovereign leadership architecture, and we've got to start there first, and to work helping leaders understand that leadership is not just about managing the people, but
Right.
there has to be a stronger focus on governing ourselves first, because I
Right.
think that we can see, looking across, I'll just stay right here in our country, we can see what ungoverned leadership does. We can see what happens with that. And I think that's where we really need to be now.
Yep. Yep. You are so right about that.
Mhm.
Today we kind of stayed in psychological safety, but that's okay. We will come back next week and talk to you about POS some more, so you know about perceived organizational support, and we'll touch base a little bit to bring that in line with the psychological safety. So as we actually end up coming to the end of today's program, we actually want to thank each and every one of you for spending time with us. And we hope today's conversation has provided valuable insights that you can immediately apply within your leadership journey, your team, and your organization.
Yes, we love for you to really think about leadership being creating environments where individuals can thrive, where they not only perform their best, but they contribute meaningfully to the shared vision and the purpose of your organization.
Yeah. Remember, through the lens of industrial organizational psychology and positive psychology, we know that organizations can flourish when leaders intentionally invest in people, culture, well being, and performance. Can't take any of those out. The most successful organizations are those that recognize that human potential is their greatest competitive advantage.
Yes. So we encourage you to take one key insight from today's discussion, put it into action. Most importantly, communicate with us in the chat. You know, what stood out for you? And what is one thing that you can take away from today's discussion that you can go and put into action? Because small intentional changes often create extraordinary results over time.
Yes. Be sure to follow TCS Consulting LLC on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, and future, so you can make sure that you get future episodes about, the leadership resources and upcoming guest experts. If today's discussion sparked ideas for your organization, we'd love to continue the conversation. Whether you're looking for executive coaching, leadership development, organizational consulting, keynote speaking, strategic HR guidance, or customized training, we're here to help leaders and organizations build stronger cultures and achieve lasting results. You can connect with us through TCS Consulting LLC or our businesses, Dr. Robin R. Hughes, R. Hughes and Associates, or Dr. Brown at Revolution Ascension. And you can also reach us on LinkedIn as well, and we can help you support your organization. Don't forget to share the broadcast with colleagues, friends, and fellow leaders who are committed to growing their impact and influence.
We'd also love to hear from you. If there's a leadership workplace, HR, organizational development, or industrial organizational psychology topic that you'd like us to discuss in a future episode, leave it in the comments. Your questions help shape future conversations. Thank you for joining us and for being part of this growing community of leaders, change makers, and organizational professionals. This is a community, and we want you to engage with us.
Right. That is so true. So
You can
remember that your leadership has the power to transform lives and organizations. Thank you for joining us again on Leadership and Organizational Development Live, brought to you by TCS Consulting LLC. Until next time, again, thank you for joining us. Bye-bye.